Hi everybody, this is Toffee bringing you part 3 of my Fire Emblem 10 hard mode transfers 100% growths except Ike LTC. Right when we're getting comfortable with the Grailmercs, we jump back over to Dane to rejoin the Dawn Brigade. Leonardo and Laura have finally built up an A support which gives Laura +2 attack. 3-6 is a map where we need to kill 46 enemies, which is similar to a route map, but in practice there's also a good bit of defend mixed in as well, because we can't actually reach that threshold until turn 6. We're going up against the fleeing Laguz Alliance, and it is possible for Zehark to defect to their cause if he talks to Lethe or Mordecai on this map. But even if we did that and then punished the traitor as he deserved, we would still be exactly one enemy short of clearing the map in 5 turns. Instead, since every enemy we fight on this map is a Laguz, we're going to treat it as a giant EXP farm. Leo's big moment has passed, so the Dawn Brigade have 3 major EXP targets: Micaiah, Laura, and Jill, and Soth can take any kills left over. Something else we can do on this map is unequip Wildheart from Volag, and that segues into another important point. The Dawn Brigade have a total of 3 maps in part 3, and they don't really need many of the tools they've gotten access to. As such, we want to ship more resources to the Grailmercs, and our vehicle of choice will be Zehark. I believe it should be theoretically possible to have Zehark defect on this map in a 6-turn, but it would be a much more annoying strategy and it would impact EXP distribution. Instead, as you'll see, he can send over the goods in 3-7. We just have to ensure he has them in his inventory at the end of the map. He will be sending over the Physics Staff, Wildheart, Statue Frag, Shine Barrier, and our Master Crown. We will also make sure everyone in the Dawn Brigade who can be deployed has a weapon. The deal with 3-6 is the Laguz Alliance want to cross the swamp. The enemies here are much stronger than the ones we fought in part 1, but they also double as large EXP bags. In normal runs, people try to have their scrub units attack transformed Laguz to forcibly revert them to make them less dangerous, such as the cats near the starting area. Because I'm Toffee and my audience comes here in part to see all the ways in which I can farm EXP, I had a self-imposed challenge on this map. I wanted to ensure that I killed every Laguz that I did while they were transformed to maximize EXP. As such, you'll see me sometimes attacking untransformed Laguz in order to get them to transform, the exact opposite of what normal players do. We mineraled all of the Laguz who were present at the start stats to make them easier to deal with. This map is where Jill completes her tier 2 training, since as a flyer she's the one unit with unrestricted movement. The way I move Jill around might seem a bit arbitrary, but that's just because I worked out how I needed to move my units in a no-fog version of the game and just replicated that clear over here. Jill will handle the right and top parts of the map and will actually end up overshooting level 10. Laura will handle the left and top left parts of the map. This is the biggest map for the discipline skill that we picked up along with Aran, since with it and Resolve, Laura can earn 4 weapon EXP per round of combat with the Laguz, since with Resolve active, she actually doubles the cats and the tigers. Micaiah will cover the bottom right part of the map. Both Micaiah and Laura are actually among our most mobile units on the map, second to Jill, since despite 6 move, they only face a terrain cost of 2 from swamps, which lets them move faster than any of our regular infantry, other than Soth of course. The one use left on the Forged Iron Knife comes in handy here, since it lets Soth attack the tiger to get him to max gauge, so he will die to Micaiah. All of Micaiah's Part 3 maps have yellow NPC units that can be ordered around, but when you're in 100% growth land, they're just EXP thieves. Laura has to get hit by both enemies who attack her on this enemy phase in order to go into resolve range, where she will attempt to stay for the rest of the map so that she can actually double her weapon EXP gain, as previously mentioned. How we set up the RNs, Jill is reliant on doubling the enemies and getting a crit on the second hit, which will run down our Iron Axe Forge uses, but this is the last map where it's going to matter anyway. This map is also the one time we can buy a Tart Staff, and we put it on Micaiah to gain more EXP. Unlike Laura, there will be units tagging along with Micaiah, so they can trade equip weapons onto her if needed, at least on the early turns. This tiger is a little weird. In my test runs, he would run away to heal after Soth chipped him, but here he's just going to end up going for Micaiah. Laura hits D rank light here. Because we mid-rolled all the enemies, Jill with her turn 1 level up will double the cats as well as the tigers. I guess I could talk about the Lagoose terrain interactions. Untransformed Lagoos have 7 move, face a cost of 2 on reed tiles and 3 on swamp tiles, while Transformed Lagoos have 9 move, do not face any increased terrain cost on reed tiles, and have a terrain cost of 5 on swamp tiles. This means that when we're out in the swamps, Lagoos that presently aren't transformed can actually move further than those who are. On turn 2, we had to be very careful with our positioning in the south to ensure we did not bait away enemies intended for Jill. Shoutouts to Volok, by the way. He helps out on this map with his Beast Lagoose vision combined with the Torch item. He also picked up the Brave Bow turn 1 with a literal 1% pickup rate thanks to being at worst biorhythm. In fact, most of the Down Brigade have bad or worse biorhythm on this map. Being something of a defender map means that even if I'm not going to drop off, it'll be a while before I speak up again. Having resolve on Lara will be a little annoying on the next map, but it's worth it. After how annoying I found the EXP gain in part 1, it's almost unreal how much XP our units are earning here. We set up the 2-use hand axe earlier, so Jill could chip this untransformed Lagoose for our flex, and she canters up to the boss area. The quote-unquote bosses are Leafy and Mordecai, who retain their inventories and stats from 3-4. Being a cat, Leafy has already maxed out her gauge, but Mordecai is slower off the block. Soth can steal from Leafy or Mordecai, but even if we could get him up there, there isn't really anything that the Dawn Brigade need to get their work done for the rest of Part 3. Laura hits C light there. Without discipline, I'm sure she could still hit D light, but I doubt she would get to C, meaning discipline saves one arm scroll. Jill hits level 10 just a little bit ahead of schedule. This means that the EXP she gains on the next turn will be superfluous, and you could probably afford to have Z-Heart defect on this map by having Jill carry him around and drop him on turn 4. On turn 6, we're rejoined by the Black Knight for the last time in this run. We don't really need him to do anything though. This one enemy is the reason Soth ran up there. Perhaps if I had set up another knife break and bought the Beast Killer, I could have diverted some of Jill's extra EXP on this map to Soth. If you do the map, you'll realize that in a 6-turn clear, exactly one enemy is left alive, and for us that enemy will be Mordecai. With his transfers, he's way too bulky to be one-rounded by Jill with an Iron Axe Forge when he's transformed. By the end of the map, Jill has hit level 10, Laura has capped out her magic, and Micaiah hits level 5. That'll be 3-6 in 6 turns. 3-7 is the defend map of the Grailmercs, and it's the longest one at 12 turns, counted as 13 because of the end event being on the next player phase. We're back in the swamp from last time, though there's no fog of war, for our first clash of armies. The Dawn Brigade and the Dayan army are scattered through the swamp, and we have many turns to engage in EXP agriculture. Given this is a defend map, our allocation of Paragon is obviously important, and the person we will give that honor to is Mist. Her EXP gain hasn't been that great so far, but that's all about to change here. We also give her Provoke to make her a juicier target for the enemies. Mist will clear out the center of the map with her Flurry, and will then proceed to show off the powerful combination of Paragon and Physic for a grand total of 44 EXP per use. You'll notice Soren was given some staves. He's going to be an important project in this map too. Ike will also take this chance to gain some EXP, since for once his services as a Lord aren't needed. And finally, Boyd is the one EXP target we have who can take advantage of a certain EXP pool you'll see once we get to the map, the Black Knight. The Black Knight is a level 20 tier 3 unit, meaning that just chipping him is almost worth a kill on a slightly lower leveled enemy. The issue, however, is that he has 1-2 range and has 40 defense, meaning chipping him on both player phase and enemy phase with a physical unit is difficult. That's where Boyd with his strength cap of 30 and the Shard Axe's might of 12 come in. Together they let him hit 42 attack, just enough to damage Black Knight even if he stands on a reed tile. Eclipse would seem like a real danger to doing this, especially given that we don't have Nihil. But Eclipse only procs at 1 range, and Black Knight seems to prefer to attack Boyd at 2 range, as you'll see later in the video if you stick around for that much time. Before Boyd can go toe-to-toe with him, we will want Ike to get into a round of combat with him for the sake of a character recruitment at the very end of the game. I'm not sure if the requirement is for Black Knight to merely survive his round of combat with Ike, or to survive this map as a whole for that recruitment, but I did not care to experiment. Something else that we can do in an army clash in a defend is transferring more items from the Dawn Brigade to the Grailmercs. Zehark leads the vanguard of the Dayan army, so we made sure he has all the gear we want the GMs to get. I gave him an Iron Sword, but I think unequipping him of any usable weaponry might have been better. Anyway, here's the lowdown on the gear he's shipping. We need 2 copies of Wildheart on the GMs for 3-11 and 3 endgame. The Physic we sent over from part 2 is getting low on uses. The Statue Frag is needed to let a unit who will join on this map do his job as a shover of Pegasite, and the Shine Barrier is for a very special strategy you'll see later in this video, though not in this chapter of course. The Shine Barrier does not strictly need to be sent over since we will get a chance to buy one, but I've routed out the classical use of the Shine Barrier for the Dawn Brigade, and there was nothing else that needed to be sent over. The Master Crown is a big one. We need a Rescue Staff user with big range by the end of part 3, and a high magic Anima Siege Tome user for the Grail army in part 4, and Soren is the best person for those jobs. Since this is full recruitment, we can have Heather steal all of Zehark's goods, letting him stay with the Dawn Brigade. We brought along Disarm and Mia so she can team up with Heather to let us grab a bunch of other useful things on this map, a Storm Sword and a number of physics staves from the Dayan Bishops. These physics will be our main way of training staffers. Har is very busy on this map as our one flyer at the start, and he will have to help ship a lot of units around. We first bring Heather to the front where she hits A knives. Thanks to Pass, it doesn't matter that she isn't killing the enemies, and she can get to Zehark on turn 2. Next on the hard plane list is Mist, who will use her Provoke along with Heather's Shade and some precise positioning to clean out the center. We will eventually get Rayson attacked a few times on this map to get him to transform, so he can dance for more units. Mist's really low base level lets her grow like a weed here. In fact, on the later turns, she'll give up on combat entirely and spam Physic once her level has gotten high enough that Physic just gives more EXP than kills. I have Ranulf bait over the enemies in that area on turn 2, since I wasn't entirely sure if I needed him to gain a level up. As it turns out, he doesn't need to grow at all in transfers. Smith has already started ramming stat caps. I was not kidding when I said earlier in the run that Mist's stat caps are awful. Turn 3 sees the arrival of two new units, the Hawks, Ulki, and Janaff. We mostly treated Laguz as standalone units who just help out where they can, but Ulki and Janaff are the first ones we actually want to train. Not too much, we want them both to get to level 30, which means Ulki needs 2 levels before 3-11, and Janaff needs a level before part 4. Ulki's personal skill gives him plus 20 avoid and dodge, making him very dodgy. Ulki is the reason the Dawn Brigade spent all that money on the statue frag in part 1. With the con boost, he can shove Marcia, and with Wildheart, he can do it on turn 1. Speaking of Wildheart, I mentioned we need 2 copies of it, and Janaff brings the second one in his starting inventory. Janaff's personal skill gives him plus 20 hit rate and plus 5 fog vision. There's only one more fog map left in the game, but Janaff's enhanced ice will play a key role there. Heather will slowly relieve Zehark of the items burdening him, but we want to get the Master Crown back to Soren ASAP. This is to start his staff rank grinding. The idea is to get him to promote to tier 3, and then have him staff punk enemies to quickly build up staff rank. He's fast enough to double all the enemies who will be in his area, and it's almost comical how fast he climbs in staff rank despite starting at E on promotion. We'll only have him do that for 3 turns to get up to B staves, climbing 1 rank per enemy phase, and then have him spam physic to get the rest of the way to A. This is so we can turn Soren's staff rank grind engine into a Janaff EXP grind engine to knock out the 1 level he needs. Har's next job will be to carry Boyd and then Ike to the bottom left part of the map so they can fight the Black Knight before going off to scoop up some EXP. Much like Fiona on the last map, Titania is stuck near the starting area, but because of all the enemies who will converge on that spot, she'll still gain a decent amount of EXP. Getting staff targets set up for Soren and Mist each turn will require rigging our units to get hit. On the subject of Boyd, we gave him Adept so that he would be able to kill Jill later in this map. Jill is the one unit in the Dawn Brigade who can actually stand up to the GMs, since we calibrated her training to ensure that she would cap out her most significant tier 2 stats right as she hit level 10. In incomplete recruitment where Heather is absent, you would bring a unit who can cross-recruit Zehark to get the stuff he's carrying. Leafy and Mordecai can always do it. Online sources say Braum and Ilyana can only do it if they got an A support with Zehark and FE9, but Ilyana on my save file was able to do it without the A support unless I'm mistaking something. Enjoy the EXP farming if you're into that sort of thing. 3-7 will be done in 13 turns due to being a defend. I'll meet you back at the start of 3-8. Well, we got through our last forced slowdown. From here on, we fire on all cylinders. 3-8 is a route map with some special terrain where lava lands, damaging units who are standing there. We get Boyd and Mist's A support here thanks to all the staff spamming from the last map. Mist is then benched for now because I didn't want her to promote too soon. But as it turns out, enemies will not attack her on the maps where she'll be deployed before her scheduled promotion, so I could have brought her along to avoid giving her a small chunk of bonus EXP later to get her promotion at the exact moment I wanted to. 3-8 is a turning point for our physical combat units. We can now forge hand axes and javelins, improving the quality of their 1-2 range. Sword units are shot on luck though. My initial hand axe forges cheap out on crit. As we go into the back half of part 3, Paragon allocation is very important to let our many secondary EXP targets reach their goals. Here, we'll have Ulki use it to grind up the 2 levels he needs before 3-11. The way this map is laid out, the team of Boyd and Har can clear out the bottom part of the map with a turn 1 dance, leaving us the top part of the map to feed to our projects. We will also bring Oscar back because if you recall, he does need to help out in part 4, for which we want to get him some EXP. We won't be able to spare him Paragon, but the enemies have finally climbed high enough in level that he earns a decent amount of EXP per kill. The reason why Ulki needs to hit level 30 is to unlock more skill capacity, since he can't equip Wildheart and Smite simultaneously before level 30. It does unlock so much more skill capacity that he will also be able to learn his mastery skill Tear, which is going to help him out for the combat that he does in part 4. Despite being a route map, this map is very straightforward. There are a few stationary and passive enemies that you'll notice, but it's nothing overly complicated. Boyd is in tier 3, he unlocks his mastery skill Colossus. Colossus is probably the best mastery there is, because the way the math works out, it is going to kill anything he ends up fighting, and it also only requires 25 capacity like stun. This means Reaver Boyd has 30 free skill capacity. Reaver also has a slight crit bonus. The general to the top left of Boyd is stationary, and we will send Titania to deal with him. Much like with Janaff last time, to efficiently train Lagoos, we need them to fight untransformed, since their effective level while transformed is far too high. And as you're gonna see, Ulki needs pretty much all the EXP that he gets on this map, including the chip, in order to actually get his 2 level ups. He does overshoot by a bit, but that's mostly because of the EXP that he unavoidably earned on the previous map. There is a stationary sage in the top right part of the map, and there is one longbow sniper who is going to attack on this enemy phase who needs to be killed on player phase. Also, the turn 1 dance, Raisin doesn't have anything he urgently needs to do, so he'll just help squeeze more EXP into Soren. Right, it might not be entirely obvious, but this map counts as an indoors map, since we're inside of a cave. To cover the boss area, we need one unit to get in the face of the generals guarding the entrance, and another to fly south to kill the bishop and cover a stationary sage. I'll just let the rest of the map play out. That'll be 3-8 and 3 turns. 3-9 sees us jump back to the Crimean Royal Knights for their last map. It's a simple kill boss and is Khalil's big moment. We can finally reassign skills on the CRKs, and we can also buy a copy of Adept. If we wanted to avoid sending the Down Brigade's Shine Barrier over, we could buy a replacement one here. We immediately take Paragon off of Joffrey and Astrid, two irrelevant units as far as EXP is concerned. We will hand those instead to Kieran, who will take this chance to gain the one level up he needs for part 4, and Khalil. The reason we bought the Killer Axe in part 2 is for Kieran in this map, so he could actually fight the one range enemies and kill them. Khalil is a unit I thought would be necessary for one part 4 clear where she would have had to be tier 3, so I consciously trained her to level 10, but it turns out tier 3 Khalil is unnecessary. Adept goes on Marcia not for this map, but for the next map where the CRKs will be present as NPC units. The CRK's bonus EXP is just enough to get Khalil and Marcia up to .99 before the start of this map. I don't think I mentioned it earlier, but Khalil comes with Nihil. The gimmick of this map is that the enemies will attempt to burn down villages, and saving them will get us more bonus EXP. Two of them will be set on fire on turn 1 enemy phase. Kieran will be able to save one of them, but we go by too fast to cover the other one. Since another side objective on this map is a droppable speedwings from a halberdier, which Marcia is going to eventually get. Khalil's meteor means she is the unit who can first start engaging the boss, and she has enough skill to pull crit on him with it. The shortest path requires climbing up the ledge and boosting her a few squares with Devdan and Marcia. With that level up, Kieran hits 23 attack speed, well 23 speed, which is what he needs right at the start of his part 4 map. On turn 2, we'll clean up, and with one shove, Khalil will be able to snipe the boss to complete 3-9 in 2 turns. Well, back to the Grail Mercs for another route map. This time around, we give Titania Paragon so she can reach tier 3. There's just not all that much to say in a lot of these late part 3 maps, because what's there to talk about? We have a surplus of deployment slots here. Boyd and Har will once again cover the far part of the map with the turn 1 dance, though we swap things around so Har has provoked this time so he can be the EXP focus. The bottom part of the map is free for us to feed to our EXP projects Titania and Oscar. This map is the reason why we shipped the Brave Sword over from the Dawn Brigade, and it's for a very minor reason. We don't actually make use of the Brave Sword's combat. All we're taking advantage of here is the fact that with the Brave Sword and her support with Titania, Mia cleanly one-rounds these halberdiers in the combat forecast, which will convince them to go for Titania instead. Zorn, of course, will continue his physic regimen. The two paladins near Elincia will go for her over even Rayson, and we can't really do anything about that, so we have to trust the CRK NPCs to take care of them. But we move Har and Boyd in such a way that they'll clean out that part of the map, which will keep the CRKs from advancing any further. We want this not just to avoid our EXP being stolen, but because we need to watch the uses of Khalil's meteor carefully. The survival of the CRK NPCs translates into more bonus EXP for us, and because of how many of them there are, and the merging of the CRK army and our army, we'll get a huge bonus EXP pool starting from the next map. You can see Har getting targeted by a stationary Purge Bishop there, and that Purge is a very important side objective for us to get on this map. Given how free the bottom part of the map is, we can once more combine Disarm, this time equipped on Oscar, and Heather to grab this very useful piece of equipment. We absolutely need this Purge Dome in full recruitment, and in incomplete recruitment I believe you need to use a Hammernews on another Purge Dome you get to make up for not having this one. The reason we wanted Marcia to equip Adept was so she could kill the second paladin with the shard spear before Khalil moved, preventing her from burning meteor uses. In hindsight, however, it would have been okay if Khalil burned one meteor use here. The line of generals and paladins in the bottom are stationary, so we have to break through them for Oscar to reach the bishop. We had to give Oscar Flourish to keep him from straight up killing the bishop. The top right part of the map is also filled with a lot of stationary enemies, and covering them all across turns 2 and 3 requires 2 separate units. There is a coin in this area we could have gotten if we let Oscar lose some EXP, but there's no point in doing that. We gave Titania a one-use hand axe so she could promote with chip EXP here. Promotion gives Titania her mastery skill Soul, which does 3 times damage and also heals her back up. I'll let the rest of the clear play out, and that'll be 3-10 in 3 turns. The Grail Mercs have united with the CRKs. 3-11 is a siege map where we must trudge back across the infamous Pitfall Bridge. We start by giving Marcia a bonus EXP level to let her cap her strength in tier 2. Marcia will be our next Master Crown user to continue her growth and so she gains extra skill capacity. 3-11 is the first map where we need Wildheart, Smite, Statue Frag, Ulki, and the first map where we need 2 separate copies of Wildheart. We finally start forging some javelins since we have lance units who need to frontline. As we exit the base, Ike gets Ragnall, his second PRF. While Ragnall is quite strong, Ike actually will avoid using it after he promotes for a while because he doesn't have much innate crit. We also recruit 2 new Falcon Knights, Sigrun and Tanith. We really are having a flyer party here, huh? Sigrun has pretty mediocre bases given her base level and join time, but she's a flyer who needs to put in work in part 4, and in fact is going to come to endgame, so we will immediately give her 1 copy of Paragon for this map. Her colleague Tanith has better base stats and similarly needs to do important work in part 4 and come to endgame, so she will take her 2nd copy of Paragon. The last Paragon will go to Soren to increase his EXP gain from using Physic. We want to put Celerity on Marcia, and we give her Daunt to help her dodge a nasty enemy late in the clear. Our second Wildheart user is Mordecai, of course. Rayson is a bit too tired, so he will sit this map out. The path we want Marcia to take turn 1 requires her to go through 2 enemies. We will pick off the far one with Adept Khalil, bringing Meteor down to 2 uses, which is what we want for 3 endgame. Though as previously mentioned, a 1-use Meteor would have worked too. To cover the second enemy in the way, we shove Mia 4 times so she can pick off the Paladin with the Storm Sword. We need to boost Marcia 3 squares on turn 1, and Mordecai and Ulki will do the honors. Something to note is that Sigrun and Marcia weigh less than Tanith when they're all in the same class. This will be relevant later in the run. With her 3 squares, Marcia flies forward and picks off a mage who would make life a real pain, and this causes Leanne and her bodyguards to spawn in. Leanne hasn't exactly grown, so we're reaching a point where she's at the limits of her ability to dodge enemies, so we picked off the sage who had 2 range, and we'll have Tabarn's group protect her from 1 range. Tanith and Sigrun will block off the starting area with Khalil, and since Khalil and Mia have shade, the enemies nearby will prefer to go for Sigrun if they can't reach the allied Hawks, owing to her worse base stats. Sigrun is so weak that she actually needs a double crit to kill one of the enemies. Marcia at least can kill everything with single crits. As you can see, there are enemies with shine barriers and one enemy with a rescue staff, but that rescue staff is unstealable, sadly. On turn 2, Sigrun will pick up Ike to hand off to Marcia after a dance, and Har advances to drop Ulki forward, and the two of them are Leanne's dance targets for the turn. Ulki there keeps him out of range of several enemies from the right, which will help us funnel EXP into units who appreciate it. Marcia drops Ike 9 squares away from the seize point. The reason we gave Marcia Dant is because of a crossbow sniper who pulls scarily high hit on her. Dalt helps make it easier to rig her to dodge. One saving grace Sigrun has is that she's force deployed in one particular army in part 4, and in that army she has absolutely no competition for Paragon, so she can spend several maps just improving her stats as much as she can. I will end this map just short of a level up. On turn 3, with the Smite, Ike will be able to seize. We'll just clean up everywhere. Khalil will hit level 10, Heather maxes out his strength in tier 2, and Sigrun will promote to tier 3. That'll be 3-11 in 3 turns. Well, back to the Dawn Brigade. Makai needs to kill 40 enemies this time, though it's much further from a route since there are far more enemies than that on the map. The base has a lot of goodies for us, including a second Master Crown and the boots. Both of those will go on Jill. If you wanted to route out Ike's anti-benchmark while retaining my EXP distribution, you'd want to give this Master Crown to Lara instead, and tweak the strategy you see to have Toronio do more work, since Jill would be less effective as a tier 2 unit, and probably have Lara take Makai's job, so that she can get to level 10. All the fighting on this map will be done by 3 units. Jill, because with 11 move, she can fly into the middle of the enemies. Toronio, who has a special standing spot that lets him fight enemies on the western end of the map. And 1 combat unit of our choice, who can fight the enemies near the right passage. This 3rd unit will of course be Micaiah in our run. Toronio gets Adept and the 10 use hand axe, so he can reliably 2-shot 5 enemies, which is the bare minimum number of kills he can take in a successful 1-turn clear. Now that we basically have no more Lagoose to fight, we buy the Beast Killer, because strategy. Obviously this implies we could have bought one earlier as long as we could scrounge up the money. We give Jill a couple of hand axes and we'll have her stun everything she can. The classic LTC clears of this map plop down a shine barrier in the right passage to funnel all the enemies into a single unit, But we can just shove Micaiah into position and keep everyone else away. With 7 shoves, Micaiah can get to the right spot to maximize her enemy phase exposure. With the Feini, Micaiah can actually cleanly one-dot everything that will go for her, since the generals are the only ones who are too beefy for her to normally one-round, but Feini's effective damage takes care of them. Once everybody is in position, we'll just let the enemy phase play out, and that'll be 3-12 in 1 turn. It's the last map for the Dawn Brigade. We start by taking a third choice with respect to Peleus, which will let him join us later. 3-13 is the iconic map that Ike's bulk was sandbagged for. Laura will take one arm scroll to hit B light so she can use the Purge Stone we get when we start the map. With capped magic in tier 2 and the Leonardo A support, Laura has 32 magical attack with Purge. Ike at base has 44 HP and 7 res, meaning 29 magical attack is enough to two-shot him. We let Ike gain 3 extra points of resistance as a result, 2 from transfers, 1 from leveling up. Since this is the final map for the Dawn Brigade, we make sure to dump all our valuable skills and items in Convoy outside of putting Adept on Laura. We also ensure that everybody has a weapon, because next map is going to be an epic army clash. We will also take the chance to sell off our useless gear to make inventory management easier later on. Note the Blizzard Tombi buy. Nobody here can use it, but we need it in part 4. If Ike had perfect transfers and growths, you would need 6 more attack on Laura to kill him here. You can get 2 magic from promotion, 2 more from the Spirit Dust, and the Dawn Brigade has just about enough bonus XP to give Laura 2 levels in tier 3. That would be how you route out Ike's anti-benchmark. Anyway, Laura will pick off Ike to complete 3-13 in one turn. Let's move onward. Pre-endgame is the most epic clear of the entire run as far as I'm concerned, and so we have a special guest to help me talk about it.
Hello. I'm low res. I do 0% low turn count playthroughs of Fire Emblem ROM hacks, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Yes. So Ike heard through the grapevine about Micaiah being involved in something called a blood contract, and he felt kind of left out of the whole blood magic business, so he's decided he's going to perform a blood magic ritual way larger than anything Micaiah's been involved in.
That said, Ike, he's not quite the most magical guy, so he asked Toffee to bring in some nice RNG magic to help him fill in the gaps. This is an incredibly long prep sequence where we do a lot of selling because Toffee finally has all the money he needs to get all the forges for pretty much the rest of the game. I think you make a couple more in part 4.
Yeah, there are some weapons we can't forge yet, which we will eventually need. But those are the only forges that we create in the future. All of our javelins and hand axes are going to be prepared here. We also need to be very conscious about where we put our skills and key items, because this is the last map of part 3, and we are going to go straight into part 4 with no intermediate base to reassign things.
So we're making a couple compromises here for the sake of skill allocation in part 4. Probably the biggest sign of that is that we're actually deploying Kai'Sa of all people. And that's just because we need a tiger who can shove while transformed, with Wild Heart, of course, that is specifically not Mordecai. Because Mordecai, his army allocation just doesn't work out for where we need Wild Heart to be.
Yeah, Mordecai needs to go to the Hawk army, but we want the unit who we're going to deploy to shove Sigrun to be a unit who goes to either the Silver or the Grail army. And we're going to send Kai'Sa to the Silver army, so that's just how things shake out.
Right. There are a couple more interesting skill combinations, and one very interesting unit pick here. My man Riss, I've heard, has been benched for several chapters in a row, so he's pretty much at base. But Toffee, not only is he bringing Riss, he's dropping an arm scroll on him, he's giving him Wrath, so we know he's going to see combat, but strangely, he also has Shade. You want to explain that, Toffee?
Yes. So Riss needs Wrath so that he can actually crit a certain enemy on this map. We even prepared a forged light tome for him all the way back in one endgame, which was the last opportunity we had to forge light tomes, and we sent it through Ilyana. The reason why Riss needs Shade is a little unintuitive, and it'll make more sense when we get to the actual clear. But it's very important that Riss was literally at base stats because with transfers, he just barely gets put into wrath range by the first enemy that attacks him. The light tome that we forged for Riss doesn't have any crit on it because I cheaped out back in part 1, but he would not need wrath on turn 1 enemy phase if we had just forged crit. Wrath is needed for something later in the clear.
Right. And if this were an incomplete recruitment run, Toffee could actually replace Riss with everyone's favorite cat girl, Liar. But you know how Toffee is. You put a mage in front of him, and you can't just not deploy him. So we're bringing Riss instead, and we'll explain the difference between those two as we start the clear.
Yeah, it's a failing of mine. You can't separate Toffee from the mages.
Mm-hmm.
We have a bunch of infantry units here because we need to perform a big shove chain on turn 1. Hard starts in the best starting spot with Celerity because he needs to move very far on this map, and we need Raisin to dance for him on turn 1, which is why we need to shove him 6 times. You might wonder why we need to shove him 6 times. Like, if you do the math, you would realize that with 4 shoves, Raisin would be able to dance for Har. But we run into another issue on this map, which is the fact that the range of the rescue staff, which we're going to obtain shortly, is capped at 15. So even though Soren has more than 32 magic, we can only have him do a 15 range rescue. We should talk about the actual map objective. This map is very similar to a route as an objective, but has some key differences. The idea is 80 units on the entire map need to die.
And allegiance does not matter, so the adorable Laguz Alliance is going to be suffering a lot of casualties. Toffee even rigged their stats so they would min roll, just so they can die even more efficiently.
Yes, it turns out the stats of NPC allies are rolled at a slightly different time from when the enemy stats are rolled, so it's possible to min roll the NPC stats without affecting the stats of the enemies. And in fact, we want a few of the warriors near where Skrimir's army are to roll up on speed to ensure that they can double all the min rolled tigers.
We make some very interesting moves on turn 1 in terms of formations. The Shine Barrier is certainly an attention-grabbing one, but we've also done an interesting formation around Raisin. We need him to be attacked enough to transform on turn 2, but seeing as this map is pretty much a route map, we don't want to overload him with enemies that cannot be countered. So Riss is here to protect our Heron friend from exactly one enemy, and because Riss is so horrible, he needs Shade so that Raisin can protect him in turn. Of the 3 Swordmasters that attack Raisin, one of them has a chance of going for Riss instead, but we use Shade in order to prevent that.
Yeah. In an incomplete recruitment run, you would, as previously mentioned, you replace Riss with Liar, and the idea is that Liar is a unit who can shove Raisin, and is also weak enough that the sniper who put Riss into wrath range can just outright kill her with a crit or 2. And all the other enemies in the north can't reach Raisin, so we would be fine with them going for Titania or Sigrun, and Titania could just kill the sniper on turn 2.
But because Toffee is such a nice guy and plays full recruitment, Liar gets to live to see another day. And unfortunately, a lot of other units that get to live are these enemies next to Soren and Har. One very weird thing about this map is that when you go really fast, the enemy AI isn't prepared for that, and a lot of the enemies that are way far out are programmed to stay stationary, either permanently or for 1 or 2 turns, which is just too slow for us. So even though Har and Soren are completely surrounded, there's going to be remarkably few kills happening in that section.
Yeah, the 2 Swordmasters working under Zihark are stationary on turn 1, and they're willing to move on turn 2. The 2 out of the 3 generals to the north of Soren are completely stationary, and in fact the Halberdiers and the Flounder Sage next to Har are also stationary. The reason why they actually die on this enemy phase is because Har went there to grab the rescue staff. The reason why we dropped Soren on that specific spot was so that he could bait 2 of the paladins from the north over, because we really did not want them to be active on turn 2. This one, Hand Axe Warrior, we're happy that Marcia is able to kill him, because as you're going to see, he's probably a little too weak to do the job that we need the warriors in that army to do.
Right. It's not a grandiose, epic LTC without a couple iconic enemy generics, and the first one of my favorites is that left general in the triangle there. The other 2 are holding the line, but he gets a little too impatient with Soren, and we're all the happier for it.
Yeah, every kill matters.
Mm-hmm.
And now the reason behind the Shine Barrier on the left should be much easier to work out. Of course, this being a blood magic ritual, how could it be complete without a nice little pentagram on the ground? But practically speaking, what the Shine Barrier does is it plugs that gap in the enemy line, and now the Lagoos are pretty much all forced to go for the warriors.
Right. And Toffee, he's used his own dark magic. Not only are the Steel Axe Warriors just barely strong enough to kill the Cat and Tiger generics, but as you know, Lagoos are incredibly accurate. They're going to be pulling like 90-something% on these guys, but they're just going to totally whiff it every single time so that they can get crit to death and help us get this 2-turn.
Yeah, like all the warriors pull anywhere between 1 and 3% crit on the Lagoos. So, this is a very reliable strategy that could totally be replicated on cartridge.
It is not a liability, I'll say that much. What is a liability is the Hawk army. They are much tougher to kill than these beasts. Not only is their leader, Tabarn, just not going to attack anyone on this first turn, but he's giving them so many leadership stars that they have perfect accuracy, stealing our EXP from these paladins, and the Hawks are just so beefy, and the Swordmaster's so bad that not even a Swordmaster crit is going to kill the Hawk.
On turn 2, we shove Riss once because 6 move is really bad, and with a shove on Ike, because the enemy formation is really bad, he'll be able to kill one of the Swordmasters and he will get his first real perfect level up of the run, capping his speed. The reason why we needed to shove Riss, and indeed the reason why Riss had Wrath at all in the first place instead of just having a Crit Forge Light Tome, is so he can just barely one-shot this Bolting Sage who's completely stationary and is a passive enemy with Purge.
Right. But we don't want Riss to stick around for too long and siphon away our precious EXP, so Titania is just going to pick him right up and keep all those Swordmaster kills for herself. And here, I definitely don't want to miss this beautiful rescue chain that Toffee orchestrated. We're getting Boyd of all people all the way to the very, very front of our formation. And not only is this a rescue chain, this also turns into a trade chain as Har brings the rescue staff over to Soren. We need a lot of firepower in the very far corner of this map because just so many enemies are stationary. So we're going to hit, I believe, the only rescue that Soren does in the entire run. And also the longest rescue of the run at the maximum 15 tiles. And Rayson has just enough gauge to transform. And I think our first action that we do after this dance, Rayson moves to what is a very dangerous looking spot, but in reality, just so many stationary enemies here, he's actually almost completely safe. But if I'm not wrong, we also snipe a very important Wyvern Rider here.
Yes. So, this Draconite was the reason why I was careful to ensure that the meteor would be at exactly 2 uses on this map. Of course, Soren grew so much that he could just have 1% crit that Draco with a meteor, one-use meteor. It's important that Soren breaks that meteor in order to equip an actual weapon that he can kill all those enemies nearby with. And the reason why we killed that enemy is because all of Jill's henchmen are completely stationary. And by sniping that Draco, we can put Har in a position where he can deal with 2 more of the Dracos for a combination of 3 enemies between Soren and Har. Whereas if Soren had just killed the Sleep Bishop and Har had talked to Jill from the left, that would have only accounted for 2 enemies, since Har would only be adjacent to 1 Draco. And that one enemy is going to make a difference. We are just barely going to get over the finish line in time here.
And after Har recruits everyone's favorite turncoat, Jill, you might be wondering why we even brought Boyd in the first place. And that's because Jill still feels a little bit bad about turning traitor again. So when she sees Tyranio's cute face, she just can't bring herself to counterattack. But Boyd, he's fine with it.
Over on the left, you'll notice Marcia picked off one specific paladin. That's because there are 2 enemies in that squad who have 2 range, a couple of Wind Edge paladins, and Skrimir cannot counterattack them, so they would prefer to go for Skrimir, despite the fact that we put Provoke on Marcia. Leaving one of them alive is fine, because Skrimir gets an action on Lagoose phase, and because Marcia is going to get to kill all of those enemies over there, that's why we gave her Paragon. Something else I should mention is the exact count of all the stationary enemies on the map. At the end of this clear, the enemies that are going to be left alive are the Sleep Bishop, who we saw moving earlier, the 2 generals in the top left part of the screen, 8 enemies in the top right section of the map, exactly 1 Swordmaster down in the bottom, and 1 stationary general who was near where Har and Soren set up shop on turn 1.
Right. But a couple units that are not stationary are... There's 1 paladin up in this section, the only guy who could ever attack Rayson. So we have Jill Canto just in front of Rayson to block that guy's path. And another aggressive enemy is a hand axe paladin from the bottom right corner. You might have noticed that one of the very few combats that Toffee does that isn't lethal is that Tanith decides to javelin down a hand axe paladin, and doing that, it opens his eyes to our goal, you know? He's joined our blood cult, and he's going to be just a fantastic enemy unit, killing one of these damn hawks that are so incredibly tough to take down.
Yeah, a couple of enemies who did not see the light were the 2 stationary soldiers near where the rescue staff was. Sigrun had to pick off the one that had a steel lance on player phase, and then the other one had a javelin, so she was able to enemy phase him. On the subject of Paragon, we have 3 copies of Paragon at this point, and while Marcia takes 1 copy, Soren takes another, because Soren is in a weird position where he has both a magic anti-benchmark and a magic benchmark for part 4. Thankfully, the magic anti-benchmark is very high and very close to the magic benchmark, so we're fine with him farming all the EXP he can over here, including getting a big whopping 80 EXP from using the rescue staff. The 3rd copy of Paragon doesn't really have a good candidate. I gave it to Tanith just to let her get a little bit of extra EXP, and it turns out it lets her promote naturally at a pretty convenient time in part 4. But especially in incomplete recruitment, there's a good argument to be made to put it on Titania or Sigrun instead. Paragon is subject to the army allocation issue, but it just turns out that the way this clear works out, we very naturally end up sending 1 copy of Paragon to each of the 3 armies, which is what we want to do.
Right, and speaking of skill allocation, eagle-eyed viewers might have noticed that Boyd actually got Nihil at the beginning of this map, and that's to make his duel against Nyla a little bit easier to rig. Our favorite Wolf Queen has no chance to kill him, and he can just get rid of her and her little dog friend.
Boyd was used for this job because he's our best physical infantry unit, and being tier 3, he can just Colossus Nyla to death. Over here, the reason why all these enemies are going for Marcia is because we gave her Provoke. The one Wind Edge Paladin, as previously mentioned, unavoidably goes for Skrimir, but, you know, when you have all of these EXP bags, why not farm them with units who actually will matter?
On the subject of really annoying enemies, I just want to bring a special spotlight of shame to the Dragon Prince himself, Kurthnaga. Not only is he completely stationary, like a lot of units in the top right corner, but even if you put someone in his range, he's not going to attack them. So he is just fully committed to slowing down our LTC as much as he possibly can.
If this were a conventional route map, I'm pretty sure you would be able to 3-turn the map because of how many units you were able to bring to the top in a 2-turn clear. We end enemy phase at 77 kills on the kill count.
And helping us get those final 3 kills, which need to happen in ally phase, are the 2 failures leading the Laguz Alliance, Skrymir and Tabarn. Skrymir, he got his entire army killed. Toffee and I, we have nothing to do with that. I don't remember a single warrior that we rigged, but he's going to make that up by killing this last 1 to 2 enemy. And Tabarn gets his only kill of the map on this Swordmaster here. And finally, the amazing cultist sees his duty is to die, and we get to 80 kills.
Yep, that's 3 endgame in 2 turns. See you next time.